Good morning, it's Gary Sly, and it's Monday morning, October the 14th, 2024. I'm into my second year of videos now, so if you're joining me for the first time, I hope you'll go back and look through some of the fun things that I've talked about along through the way. Just a little update on what's happening here in Florida. Every day when I drive back and forth, I still see power trucks and construction equipment and things like that heading over towards the coast and further south in Florida. I live in Ocala, and I work about 45 minutes south of Ocala, where my shop is located in Leesburg. And if you've seen the earlier tour of my new place, you know I'll be bringing those two together fairly soon, hopefully with the shop and living above, so that I won't have to keep making that 45-minute commute every day. Up where I live in Ocala, things are pretty normal. Not a lot happened up there. Here in Leesburg and surrounding areas of Lake County, a good bit more damage than what I saw. Trees down. There's one plate glass window here in downtown that got shattered. The awning at the bank is gone. There's some sinkholes and some issues. Certainly there are other parts of Florida suffering much greater damage, still without power. A few families without power here. So we continue to hold out good thoughts for those folks. And of course we know that up in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, other areas, having suffered from Helene, there's still a good bit of sadness and sorrow there. You know, I guess what I would emphasize is just take care of each other. Let some of this negative stuff that's flying around just kind of fly around, and let's take care of each other. It was interesting. I just finished a book that some of you might think is dry as dust, but I just found it fascinating. It's called World Textiles, A Concise History. And I won't say this is the kind of thing you snuggle up with on a cold morning just to be reading a story. This is just chock full of details and information, and really gives you a perspective on all of textile history, starting with the very earliest kind of twining together of rope made out of vines, through animal furs, all the way up to whatever we have today, which is even synthetic fabric, which is not even made from natural products to begin with. It's just a fascinating read for me, and I know I'm a bit of a dork, and I'm way into this textile, handmade stuff right now, so that's where a lot of my reading energy goes. But it got me to thinking about this huge pile of stuff here, and I'm just gonna swing it around for a minute, and then I'm going to show you some of it here in a bit. A few years back, through our local Weavers Guild, I acquired a huge amount of hand woven and hand stitched products from South America. And it always makes me think about the wonderful time that I spent in Bolivia in South America. My activities were centered in a little town called Cochabamba, just on the edge of the Andes Mountains. And during my time there, we of course spent a lot of time with folks in Cochabamba. We visited a village up in the Andes where they spoke Quechua, helped to build a playground up there. I was working with a short-term mission group at that point, and we even did some hiking. Some of my team got to the top of the second highest summit in the Andes. I will say that my lungs began to give out, and at that high altitude I had to slow down, and I didn't make it to the peak. And that was 25 years ago. I don't even know how far I could get today, but it was a fascinating experience. I can remember driving up to where we were going to be hiking. There were llamas and alpacas and carnation fields and just things that I'm not used to seeing. And at that point I was living in Virginia. So I love South America. I love the people there. I've always found South Americans in general to be very loving and caring, and in many cases very much in touch with their cultural heritage. And I think sometimes we tend to focus in North America on our European ancestors and maybe not look quite as closely at some of the great cultural heritage that comes from Central and South America. It should be realized, and I used to teach a course on Native American culture, so I feel pretty fervently about this. It should be realized that there were thriving cultures, civilizations in North, Central, and South America long before Europeans found these continents. Before Columbus, today is actually Columbus Day. I like to talk about it as Indigenous Peoples Day as well, because I don't think Columbus really discovered anything. There were millions of people living in the Americas at that time. And in particular, I think we don't, in North America, give much credit to what happened in the Incan and Mayan cultures and the Toltecs and so many of the other huge civilizations that evolved in those areas and that were large and sophisticated and rivaled, in many cases surpassed what we knew in our European heritage. The world was going on even though we didn't know about it in the Americas. Weaving was an important artistic achievement of ancient cultures in South America, and I'm just going to read a little bit of a narrative. I found a wonderful online display of South American, in particular Andean weaving, and I just wanted to give a few facts here. Andean peoples first produced textiles around 10,000 BC, which would mean that somebody in South America in the Andes cultures was making fabric 12,000 years ago. Now there are some older examples of weaving and structures like that in Europe, but certainly that should be surprising if you've never thought too much about the culture of South America. Improvements in technical sophistication occurred around 1800 BC, again, almost 4,000 years ago, and you begin to see these huge cultures, the Incan culture, the Mayan culture in Central America. There were other tribal groups, the Toltecs in Mexico, who began to dye colors, who began to use embroidery as embellishment in their work, and you can see it develop even more and more. Again, I'm reading from a text here, and I got to get my cursor to go down so I can see what I'm reading. That 1800 BCE date is when growing populations, large settlements, and intense agriculture transformed the region and set the stage for the great civilizations that would follow. You know, Mexico City is based on one of those ancient civilizations. Lacking written languages, Indian societies used clothing to define a person's gender status, occupation, wealth, and community affiliation. Textiles also played an increasing role in political and religious rituals. When high-status individuals died, they were wrapped in layers of fabric and buried with cloth offerings. And honestly, some of the research that's been done in these cultures has come from those burial sites and some of the fragments of fabric that has come from there. So, as I mentioned, I was lucky enough a few years ago to have received a whole collection of wonderfully done fabric here in the shop, and slowly I've been selling it or helping it to find new homes. And I wanted to just show you some of the vivid colors. Now, most of these you will see are going to have geometric patterns, and I should say that probably most of these were done on backstrap looms. I can't say that fast. Backstrap looms are really pretty simple little devices, and you should look them up if you like. I had one here in the shop, but it's already sold. Basically, there's a strap that goes around the person's back, and then the weaving surface is stretched out in front of them. And you take one hand and you hold your warp in place, and you use the other hand to create a weft motion. So most of these were done on very simple, very portable backstrap looms. And this tradition goes way back. Even when I was in Bolivia in the late 1990s, you could see women with the children strapped to their backs and weaving going on in the front. They might be sitting at a market, or they might be somewhere out in public with their children. They'd be caring for the children, and they'd also be working on this. And of course, that's a great advantage. This piece in particular, you can see, is kind of a thing that you would wear around your neck there. I guess you might call that a stole. Vivid colors are always going to be very important. This is a table runner, but look closely. This is not only hand woven, but it's also stitched. All those designs are basically cross stitch and other embroidery stitches. Nothing real complicated. Typically, you see a very simple stitching style, but lovely bright colors. Here's another one of those stoles that is also decorated with beads. So you've got stitching, you've got weaving on a backstrap loom, and you've got the beads. And this, again, would be an embellishment that you might wear around like that. I can't go through this whole stack. I've got some lovely rugs. Now, I will admit that the bigger these get, the more likely it is that they were probably done on a floor loom or something larger. The traditional materials for these would have been llama or alpaca. Depending on where you were, those animals were the beasts of burden in the Andes Mountains, so their fur would have been spun and used to make these. Some of these are quite nice because they're large, just kind of muted colors, and then some beautiful decoration in between. There's no stitching on this one. That's all a woven piece. Let's see if I can find one that's got one of the bigger ones that's got a combination of that. Here's a nice piece with black bands, and the straps, the parts in between are woven. Now, these different parts could have been done on a narrow backstrap loom and then sewn together. I don't see a lot of evidence of that, so I think these were probably all woven in one big piece. Colors often represent regional specialties. Dyeing would have been very traditional, of course, especially if we're talking 12,000 years ago. Interesting, when I was reading my book about textile history, some Europeans were independently finding some of the same dye properties in natural fibers that the Andes Indian people were also finding. So the deep blacks, the reds, some of those come back to similar origins. Here's a quite thick one that's probably done with some heavier wool. And this is one that has some design work in it of animals. So it's not just geometric figures there. It's woven so that the same design is on the front and the back, which, if you've heard me talk about our Navajo tradition in this country, you'll know that that's one of the specialties there. Here's a wonderful shawl. Look at this piece. It's got crocheted design, and then you've got the hand woven. The crocheted is at either end with fringe, and then you've got some hand woven pieces. I'm glad I pulled this group out because we had a little bit of leak in the ceiling during the hurricane, and I didn't realize it. Some of these pieces are a little damp, so they're going to be hanging out on a banister somewhere in the new place so that I can make sure everything's going to be okay. I don't want any of these to be damaged. There's a beautiful piece. It's got stuff on it right now. So I'm just kind of wandering around pulling out some pieces here. There's so many to look at. I hope if these are something that you're interested in, that you'll come by the shop sometime, or even get in touch with me if there's something you see that you want. I'd be happy to help get these into the hands of people who like to collect these pieces. I don't know country of origin in all of them, or really in any of them. It was a collection that came our way in the Weavers Guild, but it's certainly worth taking a look through them. And if you love those colors and you love that kind of tradition, they're a great place to go. I enjoy having all kinds of fibers and fabrics here in the shop, and as I move into the new place, they're each going to have their own little niche. When I moved in here, I started small and I kind of exploded, and so sometimes people walk in here and they think this shop looks like an explosion. I'm hopeful that as I get myself organized and kind of put things in groupings, that the new place will be a little better. But you guys can judge that for yourselves in a couple months when I get to the new shop. I do want to remind anybody who's local that I am here in the old location through Christmas. So please don't hesitate to come by. I am starting to declutter a little bit and certainly starting to get excited about ideas in the new place, but won't be actually moving until after the Christmas shopping season is done. So don't hesitate. And you know, I realize many of you are tuning in from other parts of the country or even the world. I'm always happy to help you. So if there's something that you need, don't hesitate to give me a comment, send me an email or a text. Do a lot on social media aside from YouTube. And I do try to kind of keep folks up with what I have here. So if there's a way that I can help you, I know some of you are in kind of textile deserts where there's not a lot of shops and not a lot of stuff going on, and it can be a little tricky sometimes to order things online. So give me a call if you're looking for something, and I'm happy to help. Guess I need to have me a Coca-Cola and relax. So that's it for today. It's a sunny day, but there's a lot of work going on as people clean up and bring Florida back to where we want to be, so that we're ready to greet visitors in the winter down here. The winters here are paradise, so I hope you'll come say hi sometime. Anyhow, this is Gary Sly, and that's the legacy of Handmade Objects, and I've been to South America today. Take care.